Hey guys, happy Sunday night. I have missed y'all a lot. So it's time for another episode of Refounding Fathers because it is Sunday night and I am thrilled to be hosting Kyle, my libertarian friends. Good to see you, buddy. And then,
Hey, man, glad to be here.
yeah, it's great to see you, man. And then Chris as well. It's glad to have you back too, man. Um,
Happy
how,
to be here. Hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving.
yeah, I did. We went over to a friend's house and we're actually hosting my parents this weekend. We actually delayed them coming down for a couple weeks just to make sure, they'd gotten over some health concerns and stuff and they're doing fine now. So they're actually with us. So we're in the, age of 2020 and everything that's going on. We're celebrating Thanksgiving when we feel like it. So we're doing a little bit of
Yeah.
that now, enjoying some good food. But how about y'all? What did y'all do? What was Thanksgiving like for you and your families?
We kept it pretty small. We had my mom over, my wife's parents. That was about it. We are not really planning on anything for Christmas.
Yeah.
Thanksgiving was kind of the last week before this kind of COVID pandemic really kicked into a second gear. So we're
Yeah.
just trying to take a few more precautions from here on out.
Yeah. How about you, Kyle? Kind of the same thing or a little bit different?
Yeah, well, luckily, most of my family lives pretty locally, within a couple miles of each other. So, while we don't all live together, we live, pretty close together, and are always kind of in community. So, yeah, we just had, the family over, one guest, but she's someone who's really close to our family,
Yeah.
and yeah, just kept it really low key, and planning to do the same thing for Christmas.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of where everybody's at. And I got to tell you guys, like coming from a military family, my wife served, I've served, and all that stuff. Like we're going through deployments and everything. Like this is what it's like. Like I know
Yeah,
it's tough, to go through this. We were just talking, about, struggling to be optimistic and what's going on. But, military families, like we kind of get used to this of not being able to celebrate holidays the way we want, doing it overseas, you're just like
sure.
on Skype or whatever and everything, or you celebrate birthdays like a month late because that's when you get back. And I think that's what people are experiencing. But, as we go towards the holidays, I really get this sense that even though the numbers are going up and that's really like a huge concern, that we're kind of on the verge of the vaccines coming out. And I know there's a lot of concern with that and people are nervous about taking it. But, I was just reading a story the other day of like Mike Pence traveling to Memphis, where I grew up, and he's working with FedEx to start working on deliveries and talking about how this is really going to be an amazing thing. And guys, like when it comes to the vaccine, I've been following this very closely, ever since the beginning, since January and February, and like following all the trials that they go through and how they get to stage three and how many companies are trying to do this. It really feels like right around the corner is going to be some goodness. But you guys are right; it's not quite here yet, and it's tough going into holidays. So, I mean, Chris, you live out in California, right? So
Yeah.
with the lockdowns and all things that's going on, like what do you see? Do you think that's working? Because I know that there's all kinds of controversy around it. Do you think that's going to help, or do you feel like, are Californians even going to listen to it?
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, with the way that these lockdown orders are being enforced, which is to
Yeah,
say not very strongly, the only way it works is if people do listen and do follow the guidance. I really like the way that you framed this in terms of, being in the military and having to sacrifice your holidays with family. And when this pandemic first started, I really felt like America could kind of get into that mode, that kind of World War II, living on rations, we all sacrifice for the greater good of the nation mode. But unfortunately, that is not the prevailing mood of the country
yeah,
right now. The prevailing mood of the country is very much, I'm going to do what I want to do, which that's part of the American story as well, of course. But I really wish we had kind of come together and kind of taken that military mindset of, in order to defeat this enemy, we all do have to sacrifice for the common good. Now, before the vaccine was really in our, so close to happening, I could see people really just feeling like, well, what's the point? I'm going to get it at some point.
yeah.
But you're right. There's a lot of reason to hope with the vaccine right around the corner, and I think it's all the more reason for us to put some things aside and maybe have a late Christmas in March when more people are vaccinated.
Yeah, that's a good point. As they roll out this vaccine, I think one of the things that's going to happen is it's not going to come to everybody at once, right? They're going to do this in stages, and I think it's going to take some time for people to trust it. But as frontline workers get it, people who desperately need it get it, and there's all these stories of it working. People can move to a point of feeling a little bit more comfortable, but we'll see. I think it's going to take several months from that. Um, what do you think, Kyle? With all again, there's all this controversy about regulations and what states should do. As a libertarian, how does that make you feel to know that states like California are going into mandatory lockdowns, and I mean even states like North Dakota, have kind of shifted their stance
Yeah.
on what they're doing. I can tell you here in Florida, there's still a lot of resistance to anything like that. But at the same time, I mean, if you go to Disney World, it's like dead, and a lot
Yeah.
of like hotels and touristy stuff and snowbirds and all that stuff, and we're all kind of staying close hold. So, as a libertarian, what are your thoughts on all this going on?
Um, well, I think that again, I mean, I've said this several times. I don't know that the government should have much say a big role at all. Like maybe in what gets locked down.
Yep.
Anyone who has a job that requires them to put food on the table for their family, that's an essential job.
Yeah.
And so the way we see that government's really trying to impose what I would call pretty tyrannical lockdowns, I think it's a bad thing. And to kind of echo Chris's sentiments, I think it would be nice if our country got into this kind of World War II, rah rah mindset. But I think it's really hard for average Americans to do when they see people like Gavin Newsom, Lori Lightfoot, and a whole host of other politicians really ignore their own orders and say, "Look, this is what we all have to do." But I'm not going to do that myself. You guys have to do that.
Yeah.
I think that really sets a bad example for for people who maybe are on the fence about saying, well, okay, maybe we should lock down, maybe we should take precaution. But then when they see their elected officials really not doing the same for themselves, it really casts a lot of doubt, I think.
Yeah, I think my goal through the next like several months is to try to figure out ways to stay connected and to stay positive. They're at least
Mm.
responsible. So I got to show you guys this. So normally, like when it comes to Christmas and stuff, like I keep it low key because there's all the like the merchandise and the like Black Friday stuff,
Yeah.
enormous amounts of like candy and toys, and it just gets over the top. But this year I felt like we needed that, so we did. It was right down the street from my house. We did a 5K the other day, and I went like me and my mom, like who's already here, like staying at the house with my dad. I just went
Oh,
full
Betty.
Santa. I went full camo Santa, and I got this. I'm pretty sure I got this costume from one of those like risque like online shops. I don't know because they've been sending me ads that are like not safe for work ever since. But I got this costume from it, so I think it's a Halloween costume. I don't know, but it works for Christmas. And I'm not like as fat as a normal Santa, but like I
Yeah.
got this thing on. And what we did was they did a 5K, like just kind of socially distanced and all that stuff, like 3 miles around like our downtown and shut it down with some cops and stuff. And so like it's totally safe. It's outside. People keep their distance. A lot of people had masks on and stuff until they were running. They did prizes and everything and had like cookies and crap. But I was out there slugging, and I want you guys to know that I made it from start to finish. And I kept the beard, I kept the glasses, somehow I kept the hat on all the way through, and I jingled all the freaking way. And I'm very proud of myself for that. My
Golly, dude.
time was terrible, like, but I was with all the slow guys, but I was having a great time, and I somehow survived. My Garmin watch, was telling me it's like I don't know why, but you're running really slow. Your your, your heart rate is really high and your oxygen is low. I'm like, it's because I got a freaking Santa mask on and hair in my
Yeah, no
nose.
kidding.
But
Yeah.
it was really I had
Man, yeah, I tell you, running a 5K under normal conditions sounds pretty awful. Running it in that, it seems even worse, man.
I
It
had but I
looks like Santa's had a lot of time to get in shape during the quarantine.
Yeah,
Right.
but I did. I had some little girl who came up to me and was just like, telling me what Christmas present she wanted and all that stuff. And she was like, I didn't know you were going to come
Oh,
next
nice.
year. And all. So it's sweet, man. Like, you can find ways to still like stay connected. Like my wife for our church, she's done an enormous amount of work to keep people connected in their Bible studies through
Mm.
Zoom. She's been doing that since March. And they kind of like thanked her for it, this morning at church. And even at church, we still got masks and distancing and all that stuff. So it's not quite back, but there's signs of being able to adapt. And I look forward to getting past this and all of that. So, yeah, it's one of those things as we go into the holidays. I really hope people can connect with our show. Looks like we got about 5 or 6 folks that are watching live now. So let us know what you're planning for the holidays, how you're, keeping it light and happy. If you've got any traditions that you're starting this year that you're going to be able to continue, we want to know because I really do. I look forward to getting past this and it being something we move on from. So, something that I'm definitely excited to move on from is the election talk because I feel like we covered that for months on this show. You and I, you guys and I, we talked, we did our predictions, we went back and forth and debated it. And then, of course, election day happened and we did our show for that and, worked through all the results and the controversies. And yet, every time I feel like I look at the news or what's going on, it seems like we're still talking about it. So, I think I had told you guys every election has some level of fraud, and I was always concerned as to how much. But in this case, we are weeks after that. We're now starting to hit mid December pretty soon, and we're still talking about an election that happened previously. And I'm curious to get your take on it. What do you think based upon the ongoing controversies, Chris? What and how do you see it going forward?
It's horrific.
Yeah.
When Biden won and the news, broke that he had definitely reached 270 and beyond, I felt this, this immense wave of kind of relief that this, not just that my guy won, but that this very tense and divisive period of American history in this election might be over. I think I had really just kind of been overly optimistic in believing that Trump would ever allow this to be over.
Hmm.
The president's attempts here have gone so far beyond just, not refusing to concede or, trash talk about how he really won the election. He is filing lawsuits all the time and pressuring government officials all over the nation to overthrow this election.
Yeah.
We had it a year ago today. The Republican Party was talking about how Democrats were attempting to overthrow an election and stage a coup by following constitutional impeachment procedures.
Yeah.
And so I'm just kind of, I didn't think I could be shocked anymore, but I'm shocked by the projection of that and the fact that apparently they were the ones planning a coup all along.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was always trying to approach this with an open mind, right? Like, so when we hit the election, I really did. I thought it was going to be very, very close. And there was a period of time where it really looked like that was going to be the case. And, as we got into states being called, we talked about this before, Fox News calling Arizona way early. I was like, whoa, that's hard to believe, that they were calling it that early. And there was numerous states that still weren't called by some sources until several days, if not weeks later. And I thought that was the right approach because the states don't have to certify it until December, right? So you've got time. And there was this rush to call the election, and of course I get it. The news wants to do that because they want to be the first ones to breaking story. But I feel like they were quick to call that, and then once it was called, I felt like there was a rush to judgment on both sides in terms of whether there is fraud or there isn't. And on CNN and MSNBC, there was this rush to, nope, there can't be any fraud. It's not possible. And then on the right, it was like, there absolutely is fraud. There's no way he could have won. And I was like, well, let's wait and see. Let's investigate this. Let's do recounts. Let's examine this. But now I feel like that's happening. And time again, what we're finding is that, yep, there were these small isolated pockets of fraud in places like Pennsylvania, possibly in Georgia. I've seen video surveillance of people, pulling out a box of ballots. And that is disturbing. But let's be real. And I feel like no one is. Let's be real. There is no such thing as a perfect election because there's no such thing as perfect people. And you're talking about a country as big as ours with as many people paid minimum wage to be able to do this, most of them doing it just to help out, right? You're going to have a few people slip through the cracks. But is the fraud enough to overturn the election? And that to me is really the question. Is there huge systemic amounts of fraud in this that would cause it to be invalidated? And Kyle, I don't see that yet. I don't. I see isolated cases, but I don't see something tantamount to, hey, stop the election, stop, certification. What about you? Oh, looks like we lost your audio here, buddy.
Sorry about that.
You're good.
Yeah, I believe we've even talked about that on the show. Where is voter fraud a real thing? Yeah, but is it to the tune of several million votes? No. Is it even to the tune of several thousand votes in key states, which is what a common objection to my comment is. And no, I don't even think that's the case. I don't think we can prove that it's several thousand votes in Pennsylvania or Georgia or any place like that. Ultimately, actually, what I think it was, and I was reading an article or a interview with Brad Parscale, who is one of the Trump campaign guys, and the internal polling for the Trump campaign was outrageous. I don't know if you guys saw some of the things that he was talking about, where in their internal polling they had Trump winning by over 400 electoral votes. That's a lot of electoral votes, guys.
Yeah.
And on key issues, on 140 key issues, according to their internal polling,
Yeah.
Trump won 139 out of 140
Yeah,
of
overreach.
those among common.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that's absurd. If anyone would believe that internal polling, they're out of their mind. And he also pointed to the fact that Trump really kind of fired and dismissed a lot of people in place of yes men, which has been part of his character and part of his. Yeah, well,
He
yeah,
ended up
absolutely,
firing
yeah.
Brad Parscale.
And
Yeah,
it's one that
and that's just par for the course for Donald. So I mean, he can point at electoral fraud. His followers can look at election fraud, but I think we got to point back at Donald for this one.
well, and then there was in Arizona, right, Chris? There was a particular Republican who kind of was speaking back against that, and honestly, he probably like I think I would have done the same thing as him. It's something that you had noticed, right?
Yes, and in any tragedy, they say to look for the heroes. We could talk about all of the spineless Republicans who still refuse to concede that Donald Trump has lost the election and that President Biden is the president-elect, who are refusing to call him the president-elect. I believe that the Washington Post reached out to every single Republican member of Congress, and only about 22 of them acknowledged this fact. But it's always good to also look for the people who are rising above. Now, I use that word heroes to describe people who are doing what in any other election would be considered the bare minimum, just acknowledging reality. But it was Arizona House Speaker Rusty Bowers made a statement. He ended with this very stirring paragraph. 40 years ago next month, President Ronald Reagan reminded us that while the orderly transfer of authority is a commonplace occurrence for Americans, in the eyes of many in the world, this every 4-year ceremony we accept as normal is nothing less than a miracle. Now Americans are being reminded once again never to take for granted what President Reagan correctly described as the continuity which is the bulwark of our republic. And, we have taken it for granted. I've certainly taken it for granted. I have the luxury and the privilege to be shocked by this behavior, but all over the world, this behavior is commonplace. Strongmen, authoritarian leaders who refuse to concede a loss, who pressure government officials corruptly so that they can keep their power. If we saw this happening in another country, we would stand in very stark judgment, and we have. And now it's happening here. And it does make us realize how much we've taken our process for granted and how we can restore it to its former glory.
Well, and I guess my thought is when I look at this election, I don't see it as this epic defeat, right? I don't see it as a referendum on Republicans or conservatism because, I mean, look how close
Absolutely.
the Senate is, right? The very good chance in Georgia that Republicans will retain it, the Senate overall. In the House, Democrats thought they were going to make gains. They didn't. They lost. They didn't lose control of it, but they got pretty close, and in 2 years, they very well could. Those are good things. And then, Trump did very well in Florida, where I live. He won North Carolina. He won Texas by more than what the pollsters predicted. So there's several areas where he gained votes, but then he lost in key Midwestern states, especially Michigan and Wisconsin that he won before. And that really is the issue to me is what did he do differently for those states that caused him to be so close? And that's something that conservatives have to look at. But at the same time, there's no sense of failure in my eyes because I've said this before. I think a divided government is often a good one, and I think Kyle, you'll back me up on this.
Yep.
Is our founding fathers
Absolutely.
didn't want our government to be strong and united and forceful in everything it did. It wanted it to be slow and deliberative, and for us to have to talk to each other, to be forced to work with one another. And I feel like that's something that we've lost, that we've lost the ability to do what we're doing right now, which is, Chris says voted for Biden and supports him. I did not, but we can still have a conversation. Kyle, you consider yourself a libertarian. I don't, but we can still have a conversation. And I feel like that's what our government needs to force our leaders to do. And frankly, we as people need to do that. So, as we enter in this tough time with COVID still lingering and there's just a lot of frustration, to me, I look for things that can bring us together, not as, conservatives or liberals or libertarians, but, as Americans, as human beings. And I think we need to focus on that. And so that's why I'm out there running around in a stupid Santa costume, is like trying to give people something to be, to smile about. And I just feel like our
Mm,
leaders haven't done a very good job of doing that. But I hope in the
that's right.
future, we'll get more of it. We certainly need it. So, any last words, Kyle? We got a couple more minutes here, and then we'll close out. But go ahead, buddy.
Sure. Yeah, I got a couple things to say, I guess. I think we can obviously look at the Republicans who are being pretty weak and not being willing to concede defeat, if you want to put it that way. But let's not forget that again. I always feel like I'm some Republican apologist here when
I
I
appreciate it, by
come
the
back at Chris for no problem, buddy.
way.
But let's not forget that there is there was the "Not My President" crowd for the last 3 years
Sure.
with Donald Trump. You had Hillary Clinton out there still saying she won the election.
Yeah, the Russian.
So let's not all cast aspersions on the Republican Party on both sides here for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'll just be honest with you. There's been a lot of stuff going on in my family the past couple of weeks to where I really haven't even paid attention to politics at all. I watched maybe 20 minutes of a show and listened to maybe like 20 minutes of a podcast in the last like 2 to 3 weeks, and that's it.
Yeah.
Life is considerably more than politics, right? Politics is not the end all be all.
Yeah.
It is not what runs our life, nor should it be. And so, yeah, I just want to encourage everyone. I know a lot of people are really worked up about politics, really worked up about this election, and politics matter, but they're not the end. But they're not the end thing. So, love your family, go and worship your God, and serve your community, because those things are definitely way more important than politics.
Yeah, amen, man. I love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's one of those things where I consider myself to be, a human being, a
That's right.
father, a husband, a brother, so many things, a Christian, before I get to
Yeah.
conservative. That's just how I approach, the world
That's right.
of how we should organize, our economic affairs and things like that. And it's easy to
Mm.
lose out of that when you're just so angry at what's going on. So
Yeah,
your thoughts, Chris,
that's
and then
right.
we'll close it out for tonight. Go ahead, brother.
Yeah, I mean, Hillary Clinton definitely has made some comments that have painted her as a little bit of a sore loser over the last 4 years. But the fact is, she did concede on November 9th, 2016, the day after the election. So I think this is such a different degree, and the fact that it's coming from a sitting president makes it very
Sure.
different as well. But you pointed out that this may have been a defeat for Trump, but it wasn't really a defeat of Republicans in general, which makes me so curious as to why so many in the Republican Party are dedicated to hitching their wagon to this, obviously destined to fail attempt by Trump to, stay in office. It seems wrong from both a moral perspective and just a perspective of political capital. Why are they continuing to waste political capital on this man? I don't quite understand. But
It's a great question. I
like
think
Kyle
it's
said, life is not about politics, and I look forward to
Yeah.
hopefully a relatively calm 4 years where I will feel comfortable forgetting about politics once in a while.
no, that's interesting comments, man. And I think that's something that we can look into as we can kind of start to look more and analyze, going further, what it'll be like for Republicans and conservatives living under, a Biden administration, and what they expect to happen versus what is more likely to happen in terms of, is he going to implement socialism or not? We can look at some of his plans and picks and things and kind of dissect that. And I think that'll help people for sure, to see what he's doing, as well as the Republican Senate, most likely, and many Republican congressmen who are going to offer that balance, the Supreme Court for sure. So I look forward to it. But yeah, you guys have a great holiday. I hope to see you again, maybe once or twice before the holidays come. But it's great to see you. Glad to know that you guys are doing well, and look forward to our next episode coming up. So don't forget, theberkinconservative.com. You can see more episodes of this. Send us questions, comments. We just got one from Lena. We appreciate it. She loved what you had to say, Kyle. So thank you so much for watching this episode, and we will see you next time.